Well, the world today is a global village, so the saying goes. But allow me to tweak that for you this afternoon and say the world is now a global village market. And you could be a major player in that multi-trillion dollar market. Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, I welcome you to yet another episode of the Financial Literacy Program brought to you by the Bankers Committee. I'm Kayode Okikiolu, and I'm back with another bumper package today. You don't want to miss it. Whether you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, an employer, an employee, or maybe you're still searching, the truth is, whatever level you're at, this is definitely the right place for you to be right now. The Bankers Committee wants to help you make the best decisions for whatever endeavor you're into, so you can be better for yourself, for others, and of course, the nation's economy at large. Today on the show, we're simplifying the seemingly complex process of adding value to your products, your services, and overall business so you can be a force to reckon with both locally here in Nigeria and on the international market. And guess what? We're also going to walk you through the routes which you can take to get there. As I said, it's a full package. So brace up. Well, just before I introduce the guests on the program today, who, by the way, have so much to share with you, I need you to know that you can also be a part of this conversation, and here's how to do that. If you're on Instagram, head over to the handle at Bankers Committee FLPE. That's Bankers, spelled Bankers, Committee with a double M, double T, double E. And FLPE, just one word, all right? So you can drop your questions and contributions right there, and we'll be sure to take them. But that's not all. If you're on WhatsApp, fantastic. You can send in your questions to 0706 449 8228. Don't worry, I'll take that again. The number to send your questions, your contributions to on WhatsApp is 0706 449 8229. 0706 449 8229. Please note no calls, just text messages so we can read them and get our panelists to answer your questions. But that's not all. You can also follow our podcast online at www.smegrowth.ng. That's www.smegrowth.ng. It's a whole community there. You can get to, ask questions, drop things, and even get to listen to previous episodes of this program. So those are the ways you can contribute via Instagram, WhatsApp, and online at smegrowth.ng. So that's sorted. Let's get right into it. How can you grow your business through value addition and exportation? That's $1 million question, right? Well, we're joined on the program today by Mr. Hope Younger, who is a technical assistant to the MD Nexon, that's Nigeria Export and Import Bank. It's great to have you on the program, Mr. Hope Younger.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. We're also joined by Mr. Osaibo Omorbe, who's a divisional head, partnerships and ecosystems at Fidelity Bank. Mr. Omorbe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And last but not least, Mr. Olaoluwa Awujodu, who is a CEO eSettlement Limited. Mr. Olaoluwa, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, I was looking at Nigeria's total merchandise trade, that's import and export for the first 3 months of the year, and it totaled 9 trillion naira. Now, that sounds like a lot, right, when you compare that to what we did the previous 3 months and the previous period. But what caught my attention particularly is how much we imported compared to how much we exported. So 70% of the 9 trillion naira was import, basically money leaving Nigeria to other countries, while 30% was export. So this means we had a trade deficit of almost 4 trillion naira, 3.9 something trillion naira. But when you look at those figures even closer, you see that majority of our exports are, raw and unprocessed, like crude oil, cocoa, and the rest. Ironically, majority of our imports are finished or manufactured goods. It's a lot to talk about, and essentially what we're trying to drive at is value addition for businesses such that they can do better, not just locally, but internationally. So let me begin with you, Mr. Younger, just so we start off on the right footing. Does Nigeria have the capacity to do a surplus? I just want to clear this out. Do we have the capacity to move from this deficit to surplus?
Yeah, we have the capacity to do that.
Okay.
I think it's about putting our priorities right.
So let's get right into the challenges, because when you look at those figures and the breakdown, looks like we export rather raw materials only to import finished products. So what is really stopping Nigeria, Mr. Yongo, from becoming an exporting country?
We are really an exporting country, but the irony is that we have the preponderance of raw commodity exports, and there you are playing the low value chain segment. If you add value, you add more. Let me just give you an example. If you look at the Comtrade, United Nations Comtrade statistics, the value cocoa is number one non-oil export earner. So if you look at the cocoa exports, from what they said in 2018, for example, Nigeria exported 148,000 tons of cocoa and earned $302 million. That is raw commodities. But if you process that cocoa, you are going to have 514 million from the same cocoa beans that you have. So we have an unrealized potential of 211 million.
Just by adding value.
Just by adding value, we are forfeiting that by adding value. Because if you look at 1 ton of cocoa has a potential to earn 3.5. That's the ratio of conversion. Because when you do the cocoa butter, you are going to earn 2.5 as a factor to the 1 that the cocoa beans will add. Then you add the cocoa beans, which is that's cocoa powder, cocoa cake, additional value of 1.2 or 1.3. So that's why I think what we need to do is to encourage value addition. I'm not saying Nigeria should invest more, but there are a lot of cocoa processing industries in the country today. They are only moribund. So what is there? Let there be a deliberate policy to revamp them. And once you revamp them, you add value to it, and then you see how I think it's something that can be done.
You know, and I think this cuts across different commodities: cocoa, sesame seeds.
Sesame.
I mean, I saw coconut too. We export coconut, and we're doing quite well. Yeah. But I'm glad that you said that we have a potential to do a surplus. So let me take this to Mr. Morbe, and you know, I imagine a business owner listening to this right now and trying to bring that into his business or his potential business, thinking, wait a minute, I can actually do more. But there's always that question of what is the next step to take right now. So for that business owner or potential business owner listening right now, and they're excited about this conversation because, hey, exportation is good, earns us forex, provides jobs, and the list goes on and on. What would you say is a first step really to take for a business owner from that?
Yes, good question, Kayode. I'd say very clearly that for that business person who's looking to go into the export space, there's a need to do what I would like to call the needed self-review to clearly understand what he wants to do. For instance, which of the sectors or commodities does he want to focus on? Where is he coming from? Does he have any capabilities today? What additional capabilities does he need to bring to the table? What are the key requirements that he needs to meet, both on the regulatory side, for instance, on the larger governmental side, and even on the core activity side? I'm assuming he's adding value, or is just in the chain where he's possibly moving stuff from the farm gate to the point where the other players will move it abroad. All of that insights gathering, all of that, diagnostics that would then, put him in a position where he's then, equipped with the relevant insights and knowledge that clearly positions him to do things a lot more properly, and doesn't even put him in a position where the little capital, for instance, that he's beginning to bring into the process is at a risk of being lost, are very, very essential. Now, I think a lot of, for us, for instance, in Fidelity Bank, a major focus for us with respect to working with entrepreneurs is to try and help them build capacity. So if we relate it very quickly to the export space, so today, for instance, we've realized that there are a whole lot of people who are doing different things in the export space. So you have guys who are at the farm gates moving cashew, for instance, from Malaysia to the other big players who would export them abroad. Right. You even have guys who are buying cocoa, for instance. They don't have the facilities to process, but they are middlemen between the guys in the farm in the farms and then of course the guys who have the processing facilities. We we looked inwards and we said, hey, everybody in this chain possibly needs to be, in fact, need to be brought together for them to exchange ideas, share experiences, and that led us to institute the Export Management Program. We run in conjunction with the Nigerian Exports Promotion Council and the Lagos Business School. That management program runs every quarter. It is not very costly. It is extremely friendly. But what it does is that it enables people who want to go into this space, whether they are already, those who want to go into the space, those who are already playing in this space, it just further equips them with the relevant insights, the relevant capacities to ensure that they don't only take, or rather, they don't only come to the table to realize that they need to take certain steps, but they are able to then, get all of what is required to take the steps rightly and ultimately add value to everybody.
So clearly, there's help available.
Absolutely.
Okay, just before I bring in Mr. Okikiolu, let me just take the number where you can send your messages to on WhatsApp again. I may have missed a digit. The number is 0706 449 8228. Again, if you want to send in questions, if you want to send in contributions to this conversation about adding value and exporting for better revenue earnings and to boost our trade, you can send that question, whatever it is, to 0706 449 8228. So we'll be expecting your messages, but let me bring this to Mr. Okikiolu. So we've laid the foundation essentially, and I mean, you're in a very interesting position. You work with a lot of SMEs. You've also grown along the way to what you are, what your business is right now. There are challenges, right? So the business owner is thinking, yes, I can add value, right? But they're faced with challenges, infrastructure. There are a lot of challenges, which is clear to everybody, the business owner. How can you surmount those challenges? Because whether you like it or not, there are people actually making money off export. I mean, yes, we're doing a deficit, but at least there's still something to show. So clearly some people are doing something right, which we could replicate. So what is that thing you have to get right?
All right, thank you. So first of all, just like you mentioned, we have a lot of challenges, infrastructure, access to capital, literacy level, access to financial services, which is something that I focus on. With our agent network, we run one of the large agent networks in Nigeria. We're able to provide cash in, cash out, and all that. But a lot more needs to be done, especially when it comes to agricultural. Maybe some cases even need for escrow, making sure that a trader can leave his location without having to carry a lot of cash to be able to get to his destination to purchase and be able to access cash and be able to provide that cash to the farmer, without actually moving cash. So those are part of the things that we do with our agent network, and as well every other agent network in SANEF as well. Then I think that also we should not forget that ultimately this is an entrepreneurial venture. There are always going to be risks. I know that earlier my colleague spoke about trying to avoid as much risks as possible. But the truth is that reality is that sometimes you have to learn, so maybe you lose some money, maybe you win some, but then that experience, the next time you're maybe your first shipment, you don't make as much money or you lose some money. The next time you want to do it, you probably know, okay, I shouldn't make this mistake again because I've learned my lesson the first time, and then you do it better, or maybe by then you have better connections at the ports, and then you can export at a more profitable margin and all that. But so I just want people to keep that in mind, that yes, we can do all these things, but you have to always consider that business, you are going to win, you are going to lose, but ultimately you hang in there and then you get it right eventually for your own benefits and the benefit of the country.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Exactly.
That's the same. So Mr. Younger, let me come back to you. I mean, you have an overview, as it were, and you've looked at those figures. Essentially, you've taken a look at some of the products that are doing well, that could do better, some that we need to, give a little push, and they'll be doing great. So for you, what would you say? Because I imagine people also trying to get ideas. They're investors looking to what they can or where they can invest their money into. So which would you say, which of them are low-hanging fruits that can actually do better for us? Which of these export potentials are low-hanging fruits for us as a nation?
Like for now, you see, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits. Different sectors have low-hanging fruit. If you look at the structure of our GDP today, almost 52% to 54% is services. let's promote services exports. That's where the money is. Services export promotion, because there are a lot of things that we can do. Professional services can be exported. Engineering services can be exported. Creative economy, technology. So there are a lot of services. So let's promote services export to broaden our export market. And then secondly, Nigeria is endowed with solid minerals. How do we broaden the export basket?
Mr. Yongo, fantastic point you made there. So we'll go on a quick break, essentially. And when we return, we'll explore this point because I think it's quite important to touch on them. So please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
Are you an SME or business manager trying to find your feet post-COVID? Listen up. The Bankers Committee, in keeping up with its mandate for financial inclusion, presents a 5-week financial literacy radio program to equip you with the skills to thrive in a post-COVID economy. The radio series will focus on SMEs in agriculture, trade and commerce, technology, diaspora remittance, manufacturing, and the export industry, and will feature experts from deposit money banks, development agencies, and successful entrepreneurs who will provide capacity building support for SME growth post-COVID. Weekly topics to be discussed include diaspora remittances and its impact on the Nigerian economy, sustainable economic growth through value addition and exportation, growing the economy through value chain, growth strategy for business post-COVID, proactive strategies for business in recovery. Join the conversation by tuning in every week on Thursday by 4:30 to 5 p.m. on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Bankers Committee, enhancing your business growth.
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still listening to Financial Literacy Program brought to you by the Bankers Committee, and I have three gentlemen still with me in the studio. Mr. Hope Yongo, who is a technical assistant to the MD Nexon, that's Nigeria Export and Import Bank, as well as Mr. Osaibo Vomorgwe, the Divisional Head, Partnerships and Ecosystems, Fidelity Bank, and Mr. Olaoluwa Awujodu, the CEO, E-Settlement Limited. Gentlemen, thank you again for this amazing conversation. So, Mr. Yongo, before we went on that break, you were exploring this area, and I'd like you to continue on it.
Okay, yes, like I said, let's broaden our export basket. One of the key areas that I think is a low-hanging fruit is how do we promote, incentivize, and support solid mineral export, because we have a lot of endowment of solid minerals. Yes, at Nexum we have identified that some of the constraint to solid mineral export is logistics. And that's why Nigeria is not a bulk commodity exporter, because of the challenges of infrastructure of road and rail. But we are looking at it, Nigeria is endowed with inland waterways. So other countries don't do inland waterway transportation. And that's why we are partnering with the Navy to survey and chart the inland waterways so that we can deploy crafts, the craft that can now take bulk commodities. And with that bulk commodities, Nigeria becomes a solid mineral country. And then we can identify some commodities that Nigeria is amongst the top 10 or top 5 producers in the world. You see, you leverage from where you have comparative and competitive advantage. If Nigeria is the largest producer of sorghum in the world today, why are we not officially exporting sorghum? If Nigeria is one of the largest exporters of shea nut, producers of shea nut in the world, is the largest. Nigeria produces almost 45% of the world's shea nut. Why are we not exporting it? It's not there statistically saying. So these are areas that you have to sit down and ask and say, these are commodities, and then we can accord them, like somebody advised, commodities of national importance. Then we channel our energy and say, okay, ginger is good, let's do ginger. Pineapple is good from Cross River State, let's do pineapple. Chili, so there are issues, identify them and then promote. Then ecosystem development will come because it's a value chain thing. And then capacities are done.
So I'd like us to bring it to life even more. I like the examples you give. But so we have active players in those areas, okay, cocoa, sorghum, and the rest. But essentially, they export raw materials. They export them raw and unprocessed. So what are the value chains that are available for them to actually begin to broaden their scope into what is available for them right now? Okay,
you see, there's funding window for them. I know there are challenges to availing those funds. And I think that's where development and finance institutions like Nexum, should do more in providing credit enhancement instruments by way of providing guarantee that will give the commercial bank the impetus and the confidence to provide that thing. People, institutions like NISAL can do that on the agri space. And where we don't have instrument for solid minerals, government can sit down and say, okay, just like there is an agricultural credit guarantee scheme that is supporting the credit agricultural sector, there is a NISAL scheme that is supporting the agriculture. Let's do a credit guarantee window that can support solid mineral, that can support services. I think with that, other sectors will be developed, just like the agri sector is getting. I think with that, we will begin to see some improvement on that.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential of Nigeria. We've touched largely on how to build that potential for the players in the industry. But then it's one thing to add value. It's another thing to get access to the market you want to operate in the first place. And those markets essentially are outside of the country, so it's not like Oyinbo market where you just take your things to. There are processes to exporting these things out of Nigeria. So Mr. Morgwe, regarding access to markets, it's a big challenge really for some people, because there's already challenges already, and then now a lot of things have come into place that make it quite hard. Take for example the beans challenge which we've had, the EU saying that Nigerian beans does not meet a certain standard. So from 2015 or thereabouts, they placed a ban on beans from Nigeria. So in terms of getting access to market, what do you think we can do to sort that?
Well, I think it's a multifaceted problem that also requires solution from several angles. First is the man who ultimately is, for instance, running the business, either at the primary level or at the secondary value-added level, needs to know what his ultimate destination market requires in terms of standards, in terms of quality, in terms of all of the other things that will make him, sellable. So he needs to clearly do that or do those things even in the first place before he decides to export. Then the second level for me is for the other parties on, for instance, the regulatory side. It's important that all hands are put on deck to ensure that whatever standards and policies we come up with respect to quality assurance, maintenance of quality, they are as competitive and as comparable to those typical destination markets that we take all of these things to as possible. And then my personal suggestion or advice or reiteration of what I think we all already know is that all of these parties will also try and move the game, take the game to the market a lot more by also embarking on what in those days you used to call extension services, where they also identify those who are playing in certain spaces that their regulations and standards are targeted at, and then ultimately ensure that these guys get to know what they need to do, what is required, what the standards are saying, so that at the end of the day, the man who wants to export and the man who is guiding the process to ensure that what is to be exported is fine, are ultimately, achieving the goal of ensuring that whatever is put on the table to be exported ultimately does not suffer any sort of rejection, whether in some African market across the border or in some international market down there. Now the third level I would like to also just bring to this whole access to market conversation is to say, yes, we would want to always focus on across the sea markets. Europe, Asia and all of that. But I dare say that there's a significant market, for instance, that the West African corridor brings to the table, that the Central African, Cameroonian corridor brings to the table, that Nigeria, by its very size, capacities and capabilities, is totally and completely well positioned to feed. And I'm saying that for a lot of our people, a lot of our entrepreneurs, a lot of our companies that are, not just taking raw materials and exporting that, but also adding value, there's a need to focus on a number of these across the border markets. It's going to further help integration of the sub-region and even the larger African continent. Is ultimately going to even bring about a situation where cost outlay or capital outlay for having all of those things go across the border or move to markets that are clearly beyond Nigeria, will possibly be a lot more manageable than if you were going across the seas. And the clear examples that come to my mind, for instance, is the kinds of impact that we see from, for instance, the Araria market in Aba, where a whole lot of the leather products that are produced there feed significantly the Cameroonian market, for instance, down to all of Central Africa. And I think that if we focus on what clearly appears to be very close to us on the table, and then everybody in the chain, government, private sector, then support all of the players in the space, I am sure value will happen and sustained value will come to the table.
Mr. Ojoju, let me get you in on this one as well. I'd like you to, build on that, if you will. And you have experience also penetrating markets, as it were. What are you've gone through this path. So how about you show the way? So what is the way, essentially?
All right. So before I even go into that, I would just like to add as well that, what we're talking about is very, very important to the country, because without exportation, we will not grow as a country. A lot of people do not realize, but countries are actually in competition with each other. Just like companies are in competition. So, and the country with the highest exports is ultimately the winner. So you have all the developed countries in the world exporting. Meanwhile, we are just importing and not exporting. So by the process of actually developing and exporting and processing, we're actually not only just benefiting ourselves, but also the country as well. Benefiting our exchange rate, as an example, and so many other things. So just to wrap up on that, I would say that, first of all, you need to understand your market. You do not want to produce and process things that you do not have a market for. So you need to understand who is my market, and then from there you figure out, this is my market, how do I reach my market? Brilliant. There are cases where you may even need to, get a bit of international exposure, attend external trade events, trade shows, even employ some foreigner so that they can help you gain access to a foreign country.
Ease your way into the market, as it were.
Exactly.
So we have this question, gentlemen, from Elias Dapam from Jos Plateau State. And this question is essentially, he says he's a trained entrepreneur, and he's asking that what are the procedures to export products? I'll take Mr. Young on that briefly. And the second part of the question is, how do banks finance the business? We may have touched on that during the course of our conversation, but just to reiterate from Mr. Elias. So Mr. Younger, he's asking that what are the procedures to export products?
Okay, actually the procedure, you can go to NEPC website or the Nigerian Custom website so that you can get the detailed procedure for export. But just for the purpose of our listeners, basically you have to be a corporate. That means you're a company. A requirement is that you have to have some level of registration with like NEPC. And once you have that level of registration with NEPC, you have to have an export contract. And when you have an export contract, after you have sourced this thing, for your export to be processed, you have to now have to process an NSP form. That is Nigerian Export Proceeds form. Right. And with that, then you can process your export either by through loan or direct through your bank, who will now process the mode of the document for export, and then you export either by sea, by road, or air.
Whichever works. Oh, great. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, we have just about a minute to close on this, but Mr. Margaret, if you could just respond to that question about banks, essentially.
Okay, I think that the fundamental role that banks are designed to play in any economy, and particularly in a rapidly developing economy like Nigeria, is intermediation. It then means that if you've got a bankable, a bankable need, and you meet your financiers, say a bank, the bank will consider your application on its merit. So one thing I just possibly want to say on the back of that is don't allow anybody tell you stories about, oh, don't go, they're not going to look at you, you need to have this. Please get in touch with your banker.
Step up and experience
Absolutely. Step up and experience it yourself. Your application for financing, whether you need working capital finance to procure commodities to export, for instance, or you need finance to do machinery, your application will be considered on its merit. And if you meet requirements, which increasingly have been coming as friendly as
Mr. Margaret, We could go on and on. I know this is your forte. You can go. But gentlemen, clearly this is an ongoing conversation. You can go to our website, smegrowth.ng, or the Instagram handle, or send in your messages. Join this conversation. But the good thing is, I'm sure you've been well informed about value addition and exportation. So let's make this happen, as it were. Gentlemen, our listener, we've come to the end of the second episode of the Financial Literacy Program by the Bankers Committee. But this continues, so not to worry. On behalf of the crew, ICT engineer Egurafe Bola, Mr. Debo Aderiola, Leonard Silvanus, sound manager Mr. Dueo, and the producer Ondoemba Ori. They've been an amazing crew, and of course to the panelists this afternoon, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We'll be back next week though.
Thank you very much.
So stay profitable. Goodbye.
Thank you. And stay safe.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.